Good morning, everyone. My name is Mike Kinsella, CEO of Up for Growth, and thank you all for joining our latest webinar, Innovation Unleashed, where we're going to focus on innovators working in finance, design, and community engagement. As you all know, America has fallen 3.8 million homes short of meeting housing needs across the country, from urban communities to rural towns and small cities. We have fallen shorter and shorter of meeting housing needs, to the detriment of millions of Americans who can't afford to live well where they want to work, play, and gather. Today, we're going to understand what is going on in terms of cutting-edge, innovative approaches to drive housing under production beyond zoning reform and land use policy modernization. And again, very excited to hear from three leaders in the field working across finance, design, and community engagement. I'd like to give a special thanks to our sponsors for today's webinar, specifically the American Planning Association, our presenting sponsor. Thank you so much to APA for your partnership. We look forward to this conversation. I would also like to thank Jeff Adler with Yardi Matrix, who we will hear from in a moment. Yardi has been a terrific sponsor of this series, and really excited to engage with Yardi in a technology firm itself in this conversation around innovation. And then finally, special thanks to the Manufactured Housing Association, the Manufactured Housing Institute, for sponsoring this particular episode. So thank you all for joining. Thank you to our speakers, our moderators, and our sponsors. And with that, I'd love to hand it over to Jeff, and I look forward to this conversation.
Well, thank you, Mike. Hi, I'm Jeff Adler, Vice President of Yardi Matrix, at the Data and Analytics and Research arm of Yardi Systems. We're pleased to sponsor this series. As a data provider to the commercial real estate industry across multifamily, student housing, affordable housing, and single-family built-to-rent, we understand the gravity of the current housing affordability and supply crisis. You can find a little bit more about us at www.yardimatrix.com. We support approaches that unleash the power of private enterprise and market-based mechanisms to resolve the issues with both efficiency and with speed. And with that, I'll just say thank you all, and over to you, Qadra.
Thanks, Jeff. Welcome, everybody. I am thrilled to be your moderator today. My name is Qadra Evans, Director of Industry Relations for Zillow New Construction. And what does that mean? It means I'm basically the brand evangelist, the external face of Zillow New Construction. I do a ton of speaking engagements. I work with builder associations, builders, and other home building industry folks to bring them data, product knowledge, and other tools to help their business. And I'm overall just a presence at industry events where there's a human face to Zillow, which everybody seems to appreciate. So let's talk about today. Today, we're going to be joined by a panel of experts. They're going to talk about technology and how it can help us innovate in the ways we collaborate, the way we build and design homes, and in the finance space, specifically using technology to unlock home ownership for groups who have historically been lacking access. How does Zillow fit into the picture, you might ask? Well, let me tell you, we fit in so many ways. First, we are a tech company, so there's that. We are always innovating. And beyond that, Zillow has been advocating for legislation and financial incentives that enable the development of more housing, the rehabilitation of existing housing, and efficient land use. We've had a success this year in helping to secure new laws in Ohio, Washington, and Montana, and these are going to help loosen up zoning regulations to allow for more density, unlocking additional housing supply. Before we dive in, though, I'd like to take a minute to introduce our episode sponsor, Leslie Gooch, the CEO of the Manufactured Housing Institute. Leslie, hop on and give us a few remarks.
Thanks so much, Qadra, and thank you for moderating this today. And I just want to thank Up for Growth for putting together this webinar about housing innovation. The Manufactured Housing Institute is the national trade association that represents every segment of the factory-built housing industry. And our purpose falls right in line with today's webinar. Our purpose statement is elevating housing innovation and expanding attainable homeownership. And so I'm just so excited about the conversation that is about to take place today. Our members are responsible for close to 85% of all of the manufactured homes produced every year. A manufactured home is a home that's built in a factory to a federal building code, which we call the HUD code. And so from that process, the innovation that comes from offsite construction results in things like reduced time for construction, flexibility when it comes to the placement of the homes and where they can be placed, significantly reduced cost for housing, predictability and reliability and quality. Our houses can be built year round because of that factory built environment. And so all of those things really contribute to innovation and contribute to the availability of supply. But we have some headwinds, particularly when it comes to local planning and zoning regulations that sometimes zone us out. So congratulations to Zillow for some of the work they're doing. And I do want to say that the high quality homes that we're producing today contain the features and aesthetics that really appeal to today's home buyers. We've done consumer research, and for those considering purchasing a home or becoming a homeowner, they're really excited about some of the things that we can offer because we're offering brand new quality homes with the kinds of things that people are looking for, such as not having to share four walls. It's a standalone house. They have greater indoor space, but they have that outdoor space as well, energy efficiency and other designs that you'll hear about today. So with that, thank you for being here and participating and listening and learning about innovation in homeownership today. And Qadra, looking forward to the panel and looking forward to your moderation. So I'm sending it back to you. Thank you, Qadra.
Thanks, Leslie. Excited to be here. So with that, I want to introduce you to the stars of the show, our esteemed panelists. First, let me introduce you to Alex Lofton, co-founder of Landed. Alex, welcome to the stage. Please tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hi, everyone. So glad to be here. Really appreciate the invite. I am the co-founder and president of Landed, landed.com. We started off our work focused on helping teachers and nurses and firefighters, other essential professionals be able to purchase homes. And we've evolved that to focus on a broader set of people, but still kind of that middle income person who is trying to get into homeownership, may not have access to the bank of mom and dad that you need for a down payment, and help them get to that golden 20% or more that is very effective in being able to be competitive in the housing market and get the best rates possible to purchase a home. And we do that with a shared appreciation down payment model. And that is what we are up to.
Thanks, Alex. Next to the stage, Dana Chermesh, founder and CEO of inCitu. Welcome, Dana. Please tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hey, thank you so much, everyone. Thanks, Mike, for setting this up and having me here. I'm Dana. I'm the founder and CEO of inCitu. I'm usually based in Brooklyn. I'm calling now from Tel Aviv, Israel. I originally from here, moved to New York in 2017 to pursue master's degree in urban data science in NYU after practicing as an architect in the city center of Tel Aviv, mostly around housing development and infill development in the city center. inCitu is a startup, New York-based startup that takes city planning and urban development information and turn it into augmented reality visualization that is accessible via every smartphone on the future planning and construction sites in order to democratize access to information about how cities are changing. Thank you.
Amazing. Thanks, Donna. Last but not least, please welcome Ramsey Cohen, Director of Industry and Community Affairs for Clayton Homes. Welcome, Ramsey. It's your turn. Please tell us all about yourself.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate Up for Growth putting this on and having us all here to discuss. I'm looking forward to learning as much as I am contributing to the conversation. So yeah, in my role at Clayton Homes, I spend a lot of time being a spokesperson for the organization, speaking to and engaging with groups like this, all the way down to speaking to and dealing with neighborhood organizations when we're looking at a new development, helping us navigate those local challenges that Leslie mentioned. So a lot of my work does focus around helping us overcome zoning barriers. We in the manufactured housing industry, I think, have what I call NIMBYism plus, where there's just general NIMBYism, right, where people don't want new development, they don't want housing. But then we have in some places, particularly when it comes to the rules and regulations we have to overcome, additional barriers that prevent production. So yeah, Clayton Homes is a large home builder. We make up close to about 50% of the offsite built industry, but we have acquired a number of site builders over the last few years, and so ended last year as one of the sixth largest home builders on the site built side. And so we're really focused on trying to bring access to attainable home ownership for those middle income individuals, especially that Alex spoke to earlier, and trying to really blur the lines and learn from our site builders and educate them too on our offsite construction and bring some new innovative products to the market.
Great, thanks, Ramsey. And thank you all for being here. Donna, I know you're on the other side of the world, so thank you for dialing in on such a weird hour. We're so lucky to have you all. I'm excited to hear the discussion that's about to take place. Drum roll, please. Let's go ahead and get started. So I want to start with Alex. Alex, I'm curious how we can encourage private investors and financial institutions to invest in affordable housing initiatives while also ensuring their financial viability and social impact. Thoughts there?
Great question. Well, one of the things that we have been doing at Landed for the last few years is trying to match need for individual home buyers with this gap in their ability to be able to purchase a home, that the equity or the wealth you actually need to have to get started on the homeownership train, match that with investor needs, which include continuing to find new avenues to invest money to continue to diversify where that money goes. And home ownership or housing, especially owner-occupied residential housing, is one of the spaces that has been notoriously difficult to effectively invest in as an investor in a way that aligns your incentives of profit maximization with the kind of what's in the best interest for the homeowner. Typically, in the past, and there is plenty of examples of this, of the opportunity to potentially purchase up entire homes that would be for sale stock, but convert them to rentals as a way in which to invest in real estate. But increasingly, while that can increase the supply of rental stock, which can be effective in certain markets or helpful in certain markets, without building more housing stock, that essentially takes away what's available for home ownership. And so the big grand experiment and project is to try to find and use technology to effectively distribute investment in individual homes in a way that also allows that person to live in the home. So essentially, you can think of it as co-ownership or co-buying, or something between renting and owning a home outright, whereby you can actually have that money invested in a home, have it grow in, for your return, but also be aligned to help that person who's actually in the home get into it in the first place, and then hopefully or maybe graduate out of that type of partnership so they can be the full homeowner that a lot of people want to be and get all the gains of that come along with that financially. So I think trying the big grand experiment is trying to match that and figure out how and where you can actually make sure that the deal the home buyer gets is a fair one that's not gouging them or locking them into something that they can't get out of, while also pricing it in a way that is competitive to other investable assets that are out there. We know how to do that in debt. We have mortgages, we have a mortgage industry. We kind of maxed out on what we can do on debt. So the new frontier here is being able to do something with equity and be able to do something that actually gets people on the pathway to build wealth through building building their own equity in a home.
Yep. Thank you so much. I love the thought process behind it and all of the great innovation that's taking place to help people get into homes, because that down payment, it's a kicker. And it really is a blocker for people. And it's interesting because I think modular and manufactured homes, Ramsey, really have a huge place, especially into the economy that we are coming into. And so I'm curious how these type of construction methods can be optimized to significantly reduce construction timelines while maintaining safety and quality standards.
Yeah, it's so funny to see the popularity that manufactured housing seems to be getting in terms of the conversation and in the policy space, that, you know, sometimes a really good new idea is actually a very old idea. And so yeah, it's really thrilling. And I think I kind of hinted at it earlier of it's what we have learned, optimized over our 60+ year history in manufactured housing, and bringing that together with the way homes are produced typically on site. So blurring those lines between on-site and off-site construction, I think, really is the fastest path. And I think it's taking shape. The most obvious example I can give is our cross-mod innovation, which is a new product that we brought to market just in the last couple of years. And by we, I'm using the royal we there, right? That's the whole industry, not just Clayton Homes. And so that's a home that the best way to think about it is a home that is 70% of the home is built offsite. It's built in a facility, climate controlled. We have our process dialed in. You know, we're able to produce a home that's around 1,1600 square feet, 3-bedroom, 2-bath, and have little to no waste. I mean, typically you can fit it in, like, I think 2 60-gallon trash cans. And so you think about the production that you see for site built, it obviously is going to far outpace that. So we're able to bring that home, set it on a permanent foundation, build a garage and a porch on site. So that's, you know, your 30% it's built on site. And then the home has financing available through Fannie and Freddie. It appreciates at the same rate as a site-built home. It's able to go and be financed the same way with a conventional mortgage. So, you know, that's I think the best innovation. I'd give an example of, there was a small development here in East Tennessee where I'm located, where a developer chose to do an 18-home subdivision, a little pocket neighborhood off a main road, and all 18 of those homes were completed and sold within 11 months of breaking ground. That's a speed that is very difficult to obtain if you're going to build it site built. And I mean, just the sheer fact that rain doesn't slow us down is a really big competitive advantage, and something that we can learn from one another. So I think it's blurring those lines and figuring out how the two different processes can come together to help close that supply gap. Because if we're going to try and close the supply gap, we've got to be able to produce units at a faster rate. And so doing so inside in a climate controlled facility is going to allow us to get there.
Yeah, thank you. And I was going to ask you later in this conversation to define cross-mod for the listeners of this webinar. So thank you. You beat me to it. And now let's hop over to Donna. We're going back to the technology side. What changes and barriers exist in adopting new technologies for collaborative housing solutions? And then how can we try to overcome these challenges?
Thank you. Yes, it's, you know, I started inCitu officially in 2020, but a little bit play with the idea of applying augmented reality to planning purposes, or to zoning and land use and urban development in general, from 2019. And I actually had the idea in my mind since my days here as an architect in Tel Aviv. While I walk down the street, I don't know who here knows Tel Aviv. It's a small but very hectic urban development realm. Like, the city is a construction site. And the more I worked in the field as an architect, the more I felt that I can see the future. I just knew what is going to be built where, or what is the potential to build what where. And I had this moment of clarity of, like, hey, this is all publicly available information. Why am I the only one who can see it? Why can't we all walk down the street and experience the future of the built environment, whether it's proposed or potential or approved yet to be built, in the same naturality like we experience the existing built environment. None of us needs to be a professional to feel the difference between Midtown Manhattan to Tennessee to Brooklyn to another suburb, you know. And I came from a background of simulators from the Israeli Air Force. I trained 15 pilots on a flight simulator machine before I was an architect. So to me, it was very, I guess, natural to imagine how we train people with their bodies on urban development, like with their five senses in the most immersive, but not immersive like metaverse immersive, but immersive, natural, blended into their day-to-day act or actions. So I think when I just started, I mean, when I had this in mind, or when I first presented inCitu or the idea in 2019, 2020, I was definitely the alien in the room, talking about augmented reality for city planning. I think from the industry side of the city planning, GovTech, PropTech, real estate, it was like, what is augmented reality? Like too futuristic, not what is it? From the AR or XR world, it was city planning. Oh, that's boring. Like, what is the connection? And I think that post-COVID, I do feel that in general, there is much more openness in these very heavy, highly regulated, archaic industries, both real estate and planning and government, to adopt, to explore new technologies. And specifically, I feel that that COVID made us all realize in a very clear way how non-equitable our communities are, our cities are, our built environment, and how in whatever could actually, I'm sorry, can you hear me? I was breaking.
We
Okay.
can. You froze for just a second, but you're back.
Okay. I think COVID made it very clear that we must think differently, and we must build better communities, better cities for all. And these two, I guess, trends came together to a much more open and collaborative industry, and to many more opportunities for young companies, for new technologies to be piloted within these very heavy industries. And I do see, and we saw it very clearly since we started to deploy inCitu in real projects across the US. And it was mid-2021, and we had projects all across the country, how powerful it is to actually bring this information to different types of people, to representative audience, rather than only those who can attend planning hearings. So I think like it was very easy to prove why this collaboration really impacts the process overall.
Thank you. Yeah, I think one of the many little silver lining moments that we had from COVID, right? And if we had another hour, we would be diving into training fighter pilots, but we don't. So I would like to switch back over to the finance side of the house. You guys may or may not know, at Zillow, we actually have a burgeoning mortgage business. It's called Zillow Home Loans. It's our in-house mortgage. We are laser focused on exploring any loan product that gives low to median income buyers as much equity building opportunity as possible. And I hope that this is something that starts to gain momentum. Alex, you obviously are front and center in trying to help this process along the way. I would love for you to speak to some examples on your side of the house of creative financing mechanisms that have been successfully used to fund affordable housing projects, and how these models can be adapted and applied to different regions, different communities, and what have you.
Awesome, great, and I love to hear that on the Zillow side. The I think one of the first things that comes to mind within the housing context, there's two sides of the coin that we always are thinking about, right? Supply. Ramsey's talked a bit about that, but also demand, getting people into the homes or units that are available, and there's plenty of opportunity for innovation in both these spaces. I think on these, one comment I'll make on the supply side that's very interesting is places, and this is especially for the policy-minded folks out there thinking, like, what can be applied in other places? I think we've seen in a lot of cities, like here in Seattle where I'm based, the more you can lean towards incentives as opposed to restrictions tend to be really, really effective. Even within, for example, the ADU the having a little bit of a backyard and putting a smaller unit on it or converting garage or whatnot, being able to incentivize that kind of opens up markets. One of the hard things for private investors in the housing space is great ideas, but given the lack of the kind of the how broken the market is already and how restrictive a lot of the requirements can be to building, the more you can kind of turn towards incentives and unlock the opportunity, it'll come. And we've seen that already here with neighborhoods really changing in their dynamic in a way that doesn't completely move from single family homes to 60-story high rises, but somewhere in between. And a lot of that has been done through local policy incentives. I think on the kind of more private side, or the demand side, I should say, I would say that, the solutions that are most interesting to me are the ones that are looking at this middle ground between renting and owning for your working family. And this can be anything from kind of new age co-op or cooperative models where you're group owning something. It can be resident participation in equity sharing. So you get to you kind of similar to co-op model, but you're actually getting some of the return of the investment over time. And to do that, you really do need to partner with capital that has a strong impact focus, whether it's a government that really wants to help retain citizens, a group of philanthropy that wants to invest their money in a way that helps a specific group of people, or even employers who want to retain talent closer to where they work, having them invest in pieces like this. And that's where we really have found a lot of success, is partnering with employers who are trying to solve the retention challenge of talent and getting them to actually invest their money in a sustainable way that helps people purchase homes. There are some really interesting government models here like California Dream for All that launched this year, which was a shared appreciation down payment program that offered a bunch of money, a very substantial amount of money. I think it was up to $150,000, $120,000 per home buyer to help them cover the gap if they need to get into a home. It was $300 million allocated, and 11 days later was gone. Shows how needed that is, and it got a lot of people into homes very fast. And that's on one end. The other end is kind of organizations like Frolic Communities or the Guild Housing. They are all thinking about different versions of something between renting and owning that help people stair step towards homeownership fully, and or just kind of live in that middle ground and get some of the benefits that you get when you have permanent housing that you own. One other idea that comes to mind is Housing Connector. They are brand new, a part of a housing lab called turnlabs.org. I'd highly suggest checking them out. They are an incubator for housing ideas and new companies. And what they're trying to do is work with housing authorities to help it make it easier for private landlords to actually accept housing vouchers and reduce all the barriers that come with that, to make sure the right people are getting into the housing that's being built or available.
I'm really glad you mentioned Housing Connector. Zillow actually works with Housing Connector in Seattle, and we've got a pilot running in Denver too, and we have seen massive success with it. So great shout out. We hear a lot about NIMBYism, and I think just a lack of transparency is part of the reason that we run into such problems with the NIMBYs. So Donna, I'd be curious how we can use technology to facilitate collaboration among different stakeholders in the housing industry, which would include those community members, maybe policymakers, builders, financiers, and all of the above.
Yes, I think this is a huge issue, and especially because the process of all the construction industry, but specifically planning and participation in planning, is designed the community hearings. These are events that most people, young people, young parents, young families, students with 2 jobs, single moms, we cannot attend these hearings, even if we are super interested in them, even if we know about them.
All right, she's been coming back. There she is.
Again? Sorry.
Yeah, it's okay. It's just a little glitchy.
Okay, I'm sorry.
We're all
I'll say it again. I think this is a very basic problem that doesn't even allow the further problems to be solved, right? So it's not only the communication. First, people don't even know about it. So I think technology today, and especially with the how fast everything is, and the fact that we can actually process a lot of information and communicate it in new mediums, it gives us an opportunity to overcome jargon and professional barriers, time barriers, like the lack of spare time to spare on these planning hearings. And I think we can use our, again, 5 senses to learn about the world, to learn about very complex processes. Visualization is something that is very powerful. Our cognitive minds, our smart bodies can digest a lot of information when it comes in the right medium, in the right way to our senses. And I think we fail time after time to communicate urban development information when we communicate it through zoning maps, building codes, paper on someone's desk, Excel sheets on like a nested website, wherever. Being able to process all this information, as messy as it is, and turn it into 3D that is located in its future location, that is accessible through a simple QR code. You don't need to pre-download anything. You don't need to know anything about it. You simply walk down the street, you see this QR code, you scan, and you look at the future. And now the conversation can start. Thinking about NIMBYism, I think part of the problem is, one, people do not understand enough, or they get only pieces of information, or they're just afraid about the unknown, and the future is unknown, and change is scary, right? And we found time after time, when we communicated verbally projects that we were about to show in AR with people, we're like, oh, there is 31 floors here located in downtown Columbus, Ohio, where everything is 7 stories, right? Like, it's near a historic site, and people are like, oh, that's horrible, like a horrible idea. And then they raise their phone, it pops up, and it kind of like touches the ground. They're like, oh, that's not too bad. And then they start to ask questions about how the transit kind of gets along, where, what type of businesses will be there, how many housing units. Suddenly the conversation immediately, kind of like metaphorically and not metaphorically, comes to the ground, instead of the bird's eye view, which we architects always, for a weird reason, communicate with these Photoshop renderings, right? So we found that this like viewing or experiencing projects as if they are built from the ground level reduces NIMBYism, and also, again, by product, just opens the conversation to many more people, which, not surprisingly, the younger generation, a more diverse cohort, brings more diverse opinions, and not necessarily the let's oppose to anything. So both I guess results really produce a more positive conversation compared to what is easy.
Yeah, it's a lot easier to get on board with something when you can see it, kind of get a feel and touch for
Exactly.
it, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, good. We're gonna ask Ramsey one more question, and then I have a really, really fun exercise for all 3 of you before we go into Q&A. So those of you who are listening, please get your questions ready and get those submitted, and we will hit them up in just a few minutes. So Ramsey, we talked a little bit about cross mods, or these hybrid approaches. And you talked a lot about the positive things. I would love to know what challenges that we see with this type of model, and then what we're planning to do, what we're already doing to overcome those challenges and get wider adoption, because this obviously sounds great.
Yeah, yeah. So I think the best answer that I'll back up, and I will better define crossmod in kind of 3 product categories for offsite construction, because the distinction between those really becomes the answer to the question that you asked. So the 3 main categories are manufactured homes, right? Or homes built to what we call the HUD code. So all the homes are inspected by someone from HUD. They're built to a code defined by HUD, so they cannot leave our facility and have a tag that says they are good until they meet this standard, which is very high, rigorous standard. It's been good for the industry to have the code. We appreciate the HUD code. It's what has allowed our industry to flourish. And then on the other end of that, you have modular homes. So that's a home that is built to meet local and state codes. So that's for whatever municipality where the home will be placed. That is a home that is built to meet the IRC year or standards adopted by that municipality. Cross mod is a home that has site-built features and characteristics. That's that 70% built off-site, 30% built on-site home, but is still built to the HUD code. And so that's an important distinction, because the HUD code really is kind of the engine that helps the efficiencies of our processes and our industry shine, right? Knowing that we're going to build to this same standard and can have repeatable processes to go through and follow in our construction methods is really critical to the, environmental efficiencies that we bring, the speed at which we can build. When we move and we're having to navigate through a extreme patchwork of different regulations based on where the home will ultimately be, it really slows down that machine. It breaks the whole process. And so for us to be able to do more to overcome those barriers, it is to get greater adoption in local zoning for HUD code products. And so, I think there's room for us to learn from municipalities, right, about what are the aesthetic elements that you're trying to achieve, or what are the standards that you're wanting to see in a housing product. But don't shut the door to offsite construction entirely because you have these outdated codes or zoning policies, which frankly, a lot of them were written in the late 70s when the HUD code came into place. So that was 1976 when we got the HUD code. They were written as reactions to a product that doesn't exist in the marketplace anymore. Nobody can even build to those previous standards that were before the HUD code. So creating standardization for the HUD code and further adoption of the HUD code as being an acceptable form of housing is what's going to really help us produce an even higher volume of homes. I mean, right now, our industry makes up somewhere around 10% of single family housing, up market, down market. We're going to be about 10%. In order for us to grow that and to produce more homes, we have to have more opportunity. And so that means we need the opportunity to participate in more urban infill projects. It means we need to be able to have a seat at the table for revitalization efforts in urban corridors that right now we would not be considered or even allowed to go participate in those kinds of conversations. And I'd say too that, like, the more we can do that, and the more we've got to do a good job of coming out to forums like this, participating and telling our story, is really critical, because there's, for our industry, we're a market-driven solution, right? There's our ability to hit attainable price points doesn't come with a complicated capital stack or housing vouchers. We're able to hit price points that aren't obtainable with on-site construction, and that's able to expand access to home ownership to whole groups of people that wouldn't be able to have that option otherwise. And so when we see more and more that people want to live near job centers, live near more urban environments, but still want single family housing, but we're not allowed to be the solution that we can be. That's the biggest problem. And so to address that, we have to have more adoption for the HUD code, because it's what allows us to produce homes at that market rate to fill that need that we have currently in the marketplace.
Excellent. Thank you. I appreciate the education personally. So thank you for going into all of that. It's kind of an unknown if you're kind of working in a more traditional sector of the real estate industry. So thank you. Okay. Are you guys ready for the fun part? So everybody can read the news. It's usually not great. It makes everything sound really doom and gloom, right? So in maybe one word to a few sentences, I would love to hear, let's flip it. What are we excited about? Where is this industry going that we think is a positive thing? So think about that, stew on that, and let's start with Alex and let us know what you think.
The least amount of time to reflect. Thanks, Qadra. No, I think my perspective on this is that there is a national or global narrative that's very strong about the problem that we are all facing in housing. I think that's been finely tuned and well marketed by the media, etc. There is not the same cohesive narrative around what the solutions are, even though there are 1,000 flowers blooming. The reality is that there are a lot of really creative ideas out there that are happening, and if you're listening and you're feeling like, yeah, I kind of know, I kind of have a sense of that, but I also have a hard time tracking all that stuff. I'm trying to figure out what exactly is going on. You're not alone. Even those of us in the industry feel that all the time. And so I think that's the opportunity in front of all of us, is to kind of create a shared narrative around how these 1,000 flowers blooming are turning into a wonderful bouquet. But we haven't really quite figured that out yet. And I actually will put in the chat, I'll just actually share it right now, additional interesting organizations that are kind of at the meta level, the higher level, looking at a lot of different solutions in different spaces. I shared some of them previously in the chat as well. But I think there are some organizations that really are doing the best job possible to get out there and say, what is cool happening in this space? How can we actually fund that? How can we get them to cross-pollinate? Because a lot of housing is very local, right? And so if we want to do something grander than that, we have to figure out how to connect those ties. That was a lot more than a few sentences, but there you go, Qadra.
I was gonna say it's all wonderful, and I'm starting to feel better already. So thank you for that. Okay, Donna, tell us what you think about this.
Yeah, I'm trying to think. I mean, when you said the news and like imagine what you want to see or what you feel you see them, I want to maybe answer what I imagine we can read in the news or we can experience in only a few years from now. And maybe that's the optimism about augmented reality in general, which I feel that now 2023, we're kind of like after the hype of the metaverse and the kind of falling that everyone under always kind of allergic to the word. But I feel that augmented reality compared to this like fully immersive, very scary dystopian solutions has the ability to just be blended into our day-to-day lives. So kind of something that I imagine could be, we can be, I don't know, reading in the news is that now every construction worldwide is available to view or, in augmented reality to everyone with smartphone or their AR glasses, because everyone until then will have their AR glasses. And I feel, again, from being that alien in the room to today, I feel that today there's much more confidence, at least the way I see it, that we'll get there, right? Like there will become time not too far from now that we will be able to very naturally interact with the physical world and the built environment with a lot more layers of information in a very natural way. So that's my optimistic view of the future.
Thank you. The rainbow is starting to come out. Ramsey, let's put a cherry on top of it.
Yeah. So I think that really big challenges means that there's really big opportunity. And I think that to be engaged in housing at any level right now, I think you have to be an optimist because there are so many challenges that we all face. But to me, that's an exciting opportunity because it means such a big challenge is not going to have a singular solution. It's going to take a lot of different things. Manufactured housing, for instance, I always say we are part of a solution. We are not the solution. There are many different things that we need to try, and to know what's going to be the thing that works and solves this, I don't think we'll ever really know because it's going to be a whole menagerie of things that come together to help address it. And so that to me is the most exciting part because you have all sorts of different innovation and ideas coming out, and that some will work, some won't. And I love the way Alex put it. If it's 1,000 flowers blooming, and it's hard to see when they're in their infancy, but eventually we're going to have a field of flowers. And so that I think is a really optimistic and positive future that we have ahead of us.
Yeah, there's lots of brilliant and creative people working towards the same outcome, right? And that's a great recipe to make great things happen. So thank you all for that. Those are great final words before we jump into Q&A. I'm not seeing anything in the Q&A right now, but let's see if anything pops in.
I did see a question from someone related to training programs for Clayton that I'm happy to answer.
Yeah, and I think they're popping up in the chat, not just the Q&A.
They are.
Yeah.
I can read it to you. Yep, I got it. Is there a training program for training set crews in places where Clayton isn't active? Lack of local GCs is a big problem in our very old state.
Yeah, that's I really appreciate that question because that's a big one, and that's a universal challenge to our entire industry. There's a whole separate process of setting homes, right? That we need specialized skill sets and general contractors to come in and handle. And so, yes, we're really focused on working with our state associations and trying to build out that training and build out that network. So I don't know that we yet have a formalized training program, but it is a challenge that we are trying to solve, both by growing our footprint of launching a new business unit to focus on that, so that we can support not just our own stores and our own developers, but the entire network of developers we work with around the country, whether they're buying a Clayton-built home or not. We want to make sure that that part of the puzzle for manufactured housing is getting solved. So that's a great question.
Awesome. And then I see one for you, Alex, in here. Is the landed approach similar to a lease to own model or a land trust model or something different?
Great question. I see the one just before that is ideas about supporting community land trusts. So, okay, a little bit of a wonky framing first. I think what's helpful to think about is in the realm of homeownership and equity ownership, there's kind of two main buckets that you can think about. One is referred to typically as shared equity models, and another one is typically referred to as shared appreciation models, and then rent to own and some other models. The difference between the two buckets, the shared equity is really trying to counter market forces as it relates to the price of land and the actual dollar amount it costs to purchase a home or a building, et cetera, and bringing that down some way, somehow, by purchasing the land and designating it for certain use over time, limiting how much it can grow in value over time, et cetera. So it's really about kind of fixing that price. And then these other models, of which Landed is a part of, really try to figure out how do you be more creative with partnering institutions or people who have money with those who need money, and try to play in the market that exists today, so that there's a more diversified set of people who are accessing homeownership today than just the ones who can get a bank of mom and dad, for example. So on the question of the land trust models, I would definitely point people to Grounded Solutions, the link I put in the chat already. They're kind of a leading group in this space of shared equity. An umbrella organization has a lot of relationships to practitioners on the ground doing the latest and greatest. And so they'll have kind of the best information and perspective on kind of that particular approach of kind of the shared equity model. Shared appreciation model, the question is it similar to lease to own? Similar in the outcome goal, right? Getting people to be a full owner themselves. Different in the mechanism. Lease to own or rent to own models typically have some sort of you get into a home as though you're a renter, you pay some sort of premium, either that's put into a bank account or invested or something like that, or maybe even buying down equity over time that eventually get you to the point where you're the full owner of the home, but there's some sort of fixed schedule in which that happens. And if you hit that fixed schedule, great. But if you don't, you might potentially lose your opportunity to actually own that home. So it's a very interesting idea. It's been around for quite a while. It's gotten a really bad rap from the past because it did a lot to really take away a lot of wealth and equity from the Black community in the US especially. But there's been a lot of innovation here. And I would point people to the Tech Equity Collaborative's link to learn a little bit more about the types of things that they're encouraged to think about when institutions are trying to build those types of models to really be truly equitable. Our model, the Landed model, is an option contract. Basically, what happens is we match a investor with a home buyer. They agree to share in some of the appreciation in the future when they decide to sell the home or exit the home, exit the agreement themselves. So it's kind of a one-time exchange of capital rather than a rent-to-own model.
Awesome. Okay, now the questions are pouring in. So let me divvy these up. Okay, this is really for any of you that might know. Is there a good source of data to document the degree to which housing demand exceeds supply in a given community?
I can try and answer. I have few ideas, although none of them is exactly that. But first, there is a city builder who are mapping underutilized real estate. I just put the link in the chat. Across the US, there are already in many cities. I know after my graduation in NYU, I worked for a few months in the Department of City Planning of New York. The regional team there is conducting every year, I guess, a research on jobs and housing growth. And I think there is this metric of the ratio between the housing and job growth. And if it's, let's say, San Francisco, I think it was 8 times job growth compared to housing, and New York was 3 times, and other cities is much more balanced. So that's like a metric that implies on severe housing shortage. And there in New York, there are AHND, the Association of Neighborhoods Housing Development. They have the displacement alert map, which basically calculates based on multiple open data sets the burden and the kind of pressure on tenants in specific locations. I think it's per block, and kind of the pressure for them to live. So not exactly what you asked, but yes, around that topic. I can continue to the one that the question that was to me, I guess. What data sets we need to turn into AR. And we work in 2 main ways. One is that when we work with the private sector, with a real estate developer, foundations, or architects on specific projects, individual projects, we will get whatever data they have. Mostly it will be a 3D model, can be a simple 3D or BIM, and we will turn it into location-based AR. But when we come to solve this failure of all this information is out there and only professionals know about it and no one can see it, considering the fact that no city in the US is requiring submission of 3D models when applicants apply for either permit or land use application, we were like, okay, we don't have 3D models in the open data. We have open data. We can do 1 out of 3 things. 1, we can hire many sales people to try and chase all these developers to give us their 3D models. 2, we can try and change regulation to have cities require 3D. 3, we can apply some data methodology on whatever is out there, which is open data, tabular, but with some spatial information, footprint, number of floors, land use, height, density, FAR, floor area ratio, and we can estimate how it will look. And we will make sure that it's very clear that it's not the official design, but we will do our part of communicating whatever we can with the public, like making some sense of what is out there available in the open data. And that's what we do. We prototype this on the permits data of New York, of the Department of Buildings. Earlier, beginning of 2023, we auto-generated 4,000 projects that are now available in AR in their future locations. We tracked engagement on a few dozens of them. We had to do some guerrilla marketing because it was totally proof of concept and an internal approach initiative. But then after getting mind-blowing numbers of organic engagement from the ground, of just people scanning the QR codes and understanding and like spending time in AR, spending time viewing real upcoming projects, we started selling these to cities. And today we work with officially with city governments. The two first cities that we're going to launch fully in AR are Washington, D.C. and Charleston, South Carolina, this September. So the week of September 25th, the future of these two cities will be available in each of the permitted sites through a QR code for every person with a smartphone. So that's what the direction we are taking now. Yeah, I hope that answered the question.
Great. Congratulations. That's huge. Can't wait to go to DC and use it. It's going to be awesome. Okay, I think for this perfect timing, Ramsey, I'm going to throw this last question to you, and then we're going to be out of time. So how have you overcome stigma against offsite construction? We routinely run into issues with neighbors, HOAs, permitting departments, blah, 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 that conflate modular with mobile homes. They don't want them installed in their communities. Tell us how you get past that. Oh, I think you're muted.
There we go.
There you go. You're back.
All right, sorry about that. Yeah, so solving that's a big part of my job. So I'd like to think I have a good answer for you. That honestly, patience is going to be key. None of that happens overnight. Local governments don't move quickly to solve a lot of these issues. It gets even more hairy, right, if you're dealing with neighborhood associations, because local governments are oftentimes, as they should be, way more reactive to those local constituents. And so it's being very patient, very understanding with what their stigmas and hangups might be. Seeing is often believing. So what I've found more often than not is if you can get them to a facility to tour and see how homes are built, see the quality of the construction, and then overwhelm them with data and information that positively tells our story. When you talk about the environmental impact that our homes can have, the lack of debris and waste that goes into the production of our homes. And then when you start talking about the actual price points that our homes can achieve and how we're able to expand access to home ownership in their market and really curtailing the solution that our industry brings to that specific locality, you can have success, but it doesn't happen quickly. You got to be patient. There's going to be a lot of face-to-face meetings, sitting there having a neighborhood association tell you you're a terrible person. You got to just get through that to actually get to a positive solution and outcome.
All right, so here we go. Thank you, Ramsey. Thank you, panelists. This was an amazing discussion. So thank you so much. We have one more sponsor to hear from, Brian Laughlin. I'm going to pass it over to you. Again, thank you so much to our panelists. And Brian, take it away.
Thank you all.
Okay, thank you, Qadra. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you all for being part of this incredibly important discussion. My name is Brian Laughlin, and on behalf of the American Planning Association, we're really excited about our continued partnership with Up for Growth and the amazing work they're doing around housing provision. The American Planning Association is the nation's largest organization of professional planners, and our mission is to create great communities for all. And in many ways, we see housing as the building block for great communities and the clearest path for equitable and sustainable neighborhoods. I'd also like to mention our newest initiative, which is very relevant to this topic. It's called the Housing Supply Accelerator. And this project brings together local governments, community planners, builders, financial institutions, housing policy associations, and state and federal partners to develop, align, and advance solutions for housing supply challenges at the local level. This is a national campaign led by the APA and the National League of Cities. So if you're interested, I encourage you all to visit our website, planning.org. It's pretty straightforward. And there's a lot of information about this initiative, and there's also a lot of tools which we provided to help people that are interested in making their communities better, including designers, planners, elected officials, concerned citizens. It's really meant to put tools in hands of people at the local level. The last thing I'll say is we can't build fast enough, nor can we spend fast enough to eradicate a deficit of 3.8 million homes if we're just housing as usual, or even just more of the same as what we were doing before. Now really is the time for innovation in housing. And it's also the time for cooperation. All of our speakers referenced numerous examples of cross-pollination between products, production, finance, planning, and design, which I think is emblematic of our industry as housers. This is not a race so one of us can get to the finish line first. It's a collective effort to try and make our communities great. So all these examples give us at the APA an optimistic outlook that we're at a turning point in this housing crisis. And I hope you leave today's webinar inspired and equipped to affect your own innovative approaches to housing. And with that, again, I think thanks to Mike and the continued partnership with Up for Growth. And I give the last word to you.
Right, Brian, thank you so much for your partnership and your spot on remarks. This housing crisis, millions in number and decades in the making, isn't going to be solved by developers. It's not going to be solved by policymakers. It's not going to be solved by advocates acting in isolation. It's going to require an all hands on deck approach. And we greatly appreciate the partnership and engagement of every single member and participant in this fight on this call today. So thank you all again. A couple quick housekeeping notes. On the week of September 18, Up for Growth will host a webinar with staff from HUD on the brand new pro-housing grant program, providing essential resources to communities across the country to break down barriers and boost housing production. And October 11th and 12th, we will hold our annual Summit for Housing Changemakers, where we will bring together leaders in policy, practice, and advocacy to exchange ideas, to get inspired, and to catalyze change in communities all across the country. So please, if you haven't already, go to www.upforgrowth.org, and you can register for the upcoming webinars as well as our annual summit here in DC. Hope to see you all there. Thanks so much.